All right, we're here. Mr. Greg Brockhouse is here with the Primal Texan Experiment podcast. Thank you so much for willing to come onto my podcast and discuss not only the district, what your plans for the district, but as well as the things that you've been doing here in the community, like such as Highway 90 getting a culture distinguished, that helping out the local community there, and also cleaning up roads that have been needing to be cleaned for a very long time, that have been neglected by former members. But it is what it is. I would like you to introduce yourself. I mean, you're a council member of District 6 for the city of San Antonio. What made you? What drove you to become to run for public office?
Well, first off, I want to thank you for coming out and spending some time with us out here in the office. We are my field office. For anybody who doesn't know, a council member actually has a field office and a professional paid staff. I have up to almost 10 employees, full-timers and part-timers, that are out supporting the district, and we have our office downtown City Hall, but we're also out here at 8373 Culebra Road, right next to the Lopez Senior Center. So we have a field office that allows us to interact with people. So I always encourage people to come out and visit us whenever you get the chance. Actually have spent most of my life here in District 6, between District 4 and District 6, which, for anybody's curious about those boundaries, that means I grew up in Valley High. Mm-hmm. Spent a lot of time actually growing up too on the south side, right around Mission Road, Roosevelt, and the Harlandale School District area where my mother went to school, and we grew up down there. But we moved up to Valley High, and I've spent that time between there and SeaWorld for most of my professional career, my adult life. I spent some time in the military when I got out of high school. So this area is kind of been home to me for a very long period of time. So I'm a San Antonio raised, not born, actually. I was born in Peoria, Illinois, of all places.
Wow.
When my parents were home on vacation. My father is a native Illinoisan, a Illini born and bred, but we were home visiting my grandparents over the summer, and that's where I decided to make my grand entrance into the world. So I was born in Peoria, Illinois, but came back to San Antonio. I spent my entire life here. John J. Mustang graduate off of Marbach Road here in District 6. Finished that time, served in the United States Air Force for 10 years. Active duty, was stationed in Montana, did work in California, Colorado, Utah, a bunch of different states. I worked on, of all things, nuclear missiles. So I worked on the ICBM nuclear missile system.
Yeah, it was during your time in the military?
Amazing 5 years doing that work. And then I got stationed back here in San Antonio at Lackland. Again, of all the places to go to when I joined the military, I got stationed back at Lackland. So I came right back to San Antonio and finished up my last 5 years teaching electronics at San Antonio. Got out of that, jumped into the banking business, and literally worked for a bank right off of 151 here in District 6. And then, I got involved in politics and started working on campaigns and helping people get elected off and on throughout my professional banking career. And then I started doing more and more into politics, and I realized that was something that was important to me. And I felt a personal calling to it for a long period of time. And then I decided to give it a shot. And in 2013, I ran for city council, came up a few hundred votes short, but didn't stop, kept coming. And then when the seat was vacant and open, I came in 2017 and was blessed to win the District 6 city council seat. I'm in the middle of my first term. I'm married to the former Annalisa Sandoval. She's a Providence High School graduate, St. Mary's graduate here in San Antonio. And between the two of us, we have 5 kids. Wow. It's an absolute boatload of children between the ages of 9 and 26, and we're having the time of my life. I got into this because it's kind of always been in my heart to do politics, to work in the government world, but I wanted to do it from a standpoint of eventually being an elected official and trying to earn somebody's vote and trust to go out and do the good work of the community. And I wanted to do it here in San Antonio, in the area I grew up. And I haven't really left very far. I always tell a corny joke, but when I left my mother's house, my parents' house, we live off a thread needle over there in District 4, Ray Saldana's area. I told my mom I'm leaving to join the Air Force. I'm going to go see the world. And I literally ended up back at SeaWorld. Like, I totally came right back home within 4 years, and I just haven't really left. And I love what I do, and it's a challenging time to be a politician.
Especially with all social media.
It's social media, with the inability of people to have conversation and dialogue and to disagree. It's It's probably the most challenging time I've ever seen in the last 15 years I've been involved in politics. And there are tough days and there are great days and everything in between. So I'm just thankful to have the job. And I literally believe I have a glorified temp job. Like I don't, at the end of the day, this is going to end.
Yes.
And I take myself no better than any other human who walks the planet just because I got elected. In fact, it is temp work. And I've been gifted something for a very short period of time. And I work my ass off to go at it 24/7 every day of the week. And eventually it'll end. And I treat it like that, to always try to stay as humble as possible, to do what I think, at least, is the work that matters to the community.
Well, I've read the articles. You do make an uproar between the other city council members, but I appreciate that, because you're standing for the constituents of District 6. And I think one of your main things that you like to city councils to do more is to be more transparent, especially behind all the closed door meetings.
Yeah, and I've look, at the end of it, for me, transparency, like I don't care what you believe, right? I mean, you're going to argue a point with me, or we're going to debate something. That's fine. And I think as politicians, that needs to be the way things work. Like it's healthy to have debate and opposition and conflict. Those are healthy when done appropriately, right? Because every one of us thinks something's different or most important or not important at all. And the beauty of a democracy is that no matter what level it is, it's San Antonio or it's the state level or it's a national level, no matter what it is, at the end of the day, the votes are counted, and you get no truer answer to what the public decides or believes in a vote, because it's a numbered count. You see it and you win or lose. But the problem with transparency is a lot of, over the years at City Hall, one of the number one things that's always upset me was the amount of work done behind closed doors, right? The amount of things we do. So that the biggest day at City Hall is when we meet on Thursday. The council comes together. We're all wearing our suits. Everybody's ready to go item by item. And it almost, if anybody watches it, it seems like it's very routine. We go through the motions. That's how it's been for years. And it's not a lot of debate or anything, but you could tell things look very scripted and orchestrated. That's because they are. And the amount of work that is occurring behind closed doors, right? The prep work, the knowledge, the data. I mean, it gets so in depth that people are literally saying, hey, look, I'm going to ask to the staff, to the city staff, I'm going to ask you this question tomorrow. Be prepared to answer this. So it's a dance almost when the council day comes, and it's literally buttoned up. Most of the votes are buttoned up and done because all the work was finished and talked about, and dissension was done before it even presents itself to the community. That to me is dead wrong.
I have one issue where it goes back to the appointing of the Sauls board. Just how, even though it was 10-1, that the mayor still used his right to just appoint those appointees.
Yeah, and that again, I said some days are great days, some days are tough days, and some days you learn a lot, right? I stood against a person that I felt, while qualified, here's the beauty of life, right? I mean, you may be qualified to do something, doesn't mean you're the right person for the job. So I stood against somebody that I felt was the wrong person for the job. And it actually conflated itself. My disagreement with the person was utilized in multiple different, very, very attack-oriented manner, right? I mean, Greg Brockhouse is a sexist because I went after somebody because I felt they were unqualified and I asked the tough questions. Actually, let's be clear, not unqualified, just not the right person for the job. The person that was appointed by the mayor, I mean, she's probably forgotten more about water policy than I know. I mean, than I'll ever learn.
Well, she's a very distinguished person.
Very distinguished person, alone.
Right? Very credible.
I want to be very clear in case anybody hears this. I'm not saying she wasn't, anybody in that crowd, right? I didn't mean to say she was unqualified. My point is that I don't believe she was right for the job, right? So we got into the debate and it turned south as quickly as possible, and then people start making all these attacks. But these people don't understand is I don't care. Like say anything you want to say. I go home at night. I don't worry about you. I know I've stood my ground on what I believe in. I told the truth. And the beauty of that is I never have to remember what I said because I told the truth, about exactly what I believe and what I think. But people don't like that at City Hall. And in that particular case, the mayor, who, by the way, his number one benefactor was Phil Hardberger, his political benefactor, his fundraising benefactor, everybody. It's Phil Hardberger. That was his daughter that was appointed, right? So I was trying to also point out nepotism issues, the process, how people are just routinely appointed like that. They're the mayor's supporters. And then there's also the process by which that person believes, right? That appointee, what they believe about business and other things. And it got off the rails, and it got into areas that were completely unnecessary because people can't be told at City Hall the opposite of what they believe. Like if they get their feelings hurt or something, this is insane, or you're being rude, you're a sexist, you're a racist, you're this or that, because you frankly just disagree. And I think that's when I said earlier, but the politics have gotten so out of control that you can't even disagree with anymore without it turning into some vicious personal attack. And in that particular case, I learned a valuable lesson, though. And this is very important. So I didn't walk away from it like with nothing. I realized that some people live in that world, like that's their reality. So another colleague called me a sexist. And it's total BS. I mean,
well, once you read into the article, you read the articles and then you read actually the work that you've been doing.
The comment doesn't go with the work I've been doing, nor does it go with how I've been raised by my mother, who's a military, Desert Storm, Desert Shield veteran of the United States Army for 16 years. My daughters and what they've been able to accomplish. None of it makes sense with the attack.
Yes.
But I did learn that people live in that world, like that's their reality, right? So my colleague felt that way. And then I started to think, okay, well, let me think about her. Let me think how she would want to see things. So I try to take myself out of it to put myself into where she was. And what I learned was we do have issues with a lack of female representation in our boards and commissions. And I learned a lesson right there. Not in SAWS, we didn't have a lack of, but the next vote that came up, which was the CPS Energy Board. Mm-hmm. And I employed the lesson I learned right there, which was there was a man we were appointing to the board that had no women. And I voted against him in support of the same person who called me a sexist, right? My colleague called me a sexist. But I said, you know what? She does have a point on the female representation issues. And I got to open my eyes to things that I don't even recognize. Like I'm going after an issue or somebody's ability to do a job. I don't care if they're male or female, black, white. It never crosses my mind.
No, it doesn't.
So that's why I was taken aback by it. But I voted against somebody because I learned a lesson there, and that's that there are issues with a lack of female representation. And I voted against somebody for that reason, because the board should have a female on the board. There should be a representation. 6 board members total, not one woman, is unconscionable, right? So you can't have it. So I voted against it. And so I learned a lesson on that thing, and that's what makes some days great and some days not so great. Like the not so great day is for a colleague to attempt to hurt you in a manner and call you a name which you know you're not. Yeah. But the great thing came of it was that, all right, I can learn. I mean, I can learn, and I'll notice the next time that I might be a little bit better for it, right? So I voted against somebody who was qualified, but I didn't feel the right person for the job. The right person for the job is a woman. We have to go find that person. Yeah. And that makes it even harder on us to make sure we get out there, right? And we recruit good people, qualified people that are right for the job. And it was a very valuable lesson, because you can be as right as the world all day long, as right as the rain all day long. And you could still learn something of it, even no matter how much you think you got the answer nailed and you got it right, which I felt I did. The same point, it's always an opportunity to get a little bit better. So
that's what I feel when you say like politics has lost the kind of healthy debate, where you can debate someone has some disagreements on key issues, but then still be friends at the end of the day. I feel people have those debates, and then they end friendships, they end acquaintances just because they don't agree with their colleagues' viewpoints.
Happens all the time, right? I get into it with colleagues, and I literally probably forget about it the next day. Like I'm okay. I'm fine. I mean, you beat me. You won. Or sometimes I may have won. Most of the time I'm not. I'm on the short end of the votes, but I don't carry any animosity towards it. Some do. Actually, a lot do. And they carry that forward, and to them, you're dead. Like there's no positivity to be found in you because you didn't believe what I believed on this particular day, on this particular issue. Mm-hmm. And never mind, we may be together on tomorrow's issue, or I can help you on next week's issue. Doesn't matter. You weren't with me on this one issue, and I can't even understand why. Therefore, you are not a viable option to be a friend, a colleague, any relationships. A lot of people live like that in politics. It's a zero-sum game to them. You're with me or you're not with me. And you can, if you're not with me, you're never going to be with me. Well, and that's the part that they lose, and shame on them, and it's bad for the whole business.
The funny thing is, though, is that we're all one city still. You're supposed to unite to find a middle ground, and it just seems like just some of your constituents pick a side and stick to that side.
Yeah, and they don't budge around that side at all. And I have sides that are I'm set in stone on too. There are some things I don't give on.
Yes.
And they're not a lot, but there are some things that are core intrinsic values, moral faith values that I'm not going to budge on any day, shape, form of the week, period. But those are very small, very few. And for the most part, I don't mind. Like, I'll get convinced. If I can get convinced to go another direction, I'll do it. And initially, people thought, man, it's flip-flopping. They'll think you're flip-flopping.
No, I think it's just being open-minded.
You become open-minded. But unfortunately, at City Hall, the open-minded gets attacked. And it's in politics in general, right? If you're willing to find something different or a different path that breaks the cycle of what government is, right? It's a very, like I said, that routine or dance that's at City Hall. You disrupt that a little bit, they don't like you. If you put just a little bit of wrinkle in it, no. What are you doing? That's not right? Like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. No, you're unqualified. No, you're this. No, you're that. You hate this. You hate that. I mean, it's just, there's no in between with people in the political world anymore, and you got to be careful on it. And nothing's off limits too. They'll attack you on anything. For the simple fact you disagree with the norms and like the transparency thing. I hate that we do meetings behind closed doors. And there are people that will defend the right to do those closed door meetings all day long and make decisions out of the eye of the public view. I mean, to me, that's one of the biggest, that's what the worst thing we can do as a government official is make the decisions behind closed doors when nobody's watching. And so, I stand on those grounds, and I've been pretty consistent on it. Like, I don't change on a few things. I don't change on, you do it, you got the guts to do it, you do it in front of the people. Like, otherwise you got nothing.
Oh yeah.
If you don't have the guts to stand in front of the camera, in front of a person, a colleague, the public, and say what you think, pack your stuff and get out of here. Because you don't believe in what you're saying. And then if you want to do it behind closed doors, well, that's fine. Shame on you. But I think the public has a right to know everything we're doing. And some people don't feel that way, and they feel it, frankly, because the biggest thing I'll tell you, and I know you want to get another word in here, but the biggest thing I'll say is that a lot of people think at City Hall that because they were elected to make the decisions for the public. Like, I got elected, they trust me to make these decisions. That's actually not how it works in my mind. I'm making the decisions based on everything, every door I'm knocking, every person I've talked to. It's a conglomerate. It's an understanding of all of it that I try to do what best represents the district. Not because you elected me and I think I'm smarter than you, or I think I know what's best for you, that I'm the only person that can make this, so I'm going to go make no. So you ask why, as a politician, you keep going, you keep knocking the door, you keep talking. Like, we keep block walking, we don't stop. So that I can always figure out, all right, well, Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Gonzalez on South San Joaquin told me this. Mr. Stallings up on Timberwild said this. Mr. Brockhouse on Selborne said this. It's in my head, so that when I go make the vote, I'll do the best I can to represent exactly what the people told me.
And do you use social media? Do people contact you more through social media? They express their concerns? Because I know I sent a Facebook message to you a while back about a recording that I sent to you that happened to a J fight that ran across Marbach Road. I understand high school fights happen all the time, but going across Marbach Road and it's stopping traffic, that's a whole different issue. That was more time that the Northside Police could have been there, done something. And I was surprised that I actually saw you getting engaged in that,
Well, yeah, because I saw the Facebook post. Yeah, you sent it to me. Look, it's hard to answer everything I get. And I have some staff that try to get to it, but my staff's really leery sometimes to do it because I'm on it myself. And the volume of it makes it difficult for me to answer all of them, but I usually do. Like, if somebody's messaging me, it may take me a day or two, but I'm usually, if you look at answers on my Facebook page or stuff on there, or likes, or someone's clicking a like on a post, it's me doing it. Like, I do it. My staff's like, come on, man, you don't need to be doing all that. I said, no. That's where the field office is. And it's the same thing if somebody's attacking me I'll go answer them back. I'm like, really? Like, I'll say something like, if someone's attacking me, I'll say, well, don't let the facts get in your way. I'll say something back and they get stunned, like, why are you talking to me like that? I don't know. I'm just telling you, what you're saying is not true.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say, look, if you're going to put it on the social media world, everybody's going to see it. I have to put my viewpoint out there. So I always try to, like in the John Jay thing, you don't really know what a problem is until you actually see it. So when you see the fight and you see that it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, there's kids, they're beating the crap out of each other, and then it goes across the street into the tire shop, and that business has to deal with it. There was two young women fighting. One of them got the crap knocked out of her, unconscious, into the street, nearly got run over. Another time we had a fight there where a mom and a student got in a fight, and both got arrested and charged with felony offenses. And at that point, you have to come out and say, all right, enough's enough. And Northside has to do what they have to do, but Northside's boundaries to them are only a particular area. Like, we don't control Northside. Yeah. So, but we control everything around them. So we came in, we started doing community cleanups. I'll give you an idea, that right next to Jay on Marbach, I don't know if you're familiar with the area, but...
Yeah, I am. I went there. I graduated from the Science Academy.
Oh, sweet. Right to the left. So if you're looking at the front of John Jay, right to the left is a giant wooded area where the old farmhouse is.
Yeah.
Well, we went in there, and because we knew there was a drug den back there. The lady that owned the house is very old, couldn't keep it up anymore. So we went back in there and we discovered, and we cleaned out, by the way, 19.5 tons of trash.
Wow.
Tons. I was picking up papers from like 1998.
That's insane.
Like homework, like old sheets of books that were 20 years old. So all this is accumulated. And by the way, there was bongs, syringes, all sorts of other paraphernalia you wouldn't want your mother walking through there and seeing. And we came in and we clear cut the whole thing. The city did, my staff, my team. We brought people in from Army folks from Lackland Air Force Base, and we cleaned out 20 tons of trash, 19.5. And while we're doing it, the kids at John Jay are screaming at us because they're like, man, that's my den, man. What are you doing? You have to start somewhere.
Yes.
And I absolutely love John Jay. I mean, I graduated from there, and I struggled at John Jay. I was not a very good student. And it's not a time I remember fondly. Like, some people love their high school days and it was the greatest and they were on the sports team. No, I mean, it wasn't for me. I was always challenged on the grades and the attendance, and that's just who I was. What saved me was getting into the United States Air Force. And the further I get away from Jay in years, since I've been there, the more I realize just how good that place is and that neighborhood community. So I always want to fight for that community. I mean, that's my school, man. Fred's Fish Fry was there when I was there, and Apatitos was there. And when I skipped my government class in the morning was to go get a taco at Apatitos. No, I didn't skip anything, just in case anybody from the North Side Independent School District hears this. But, well, maybe once or twice. But, look, that's my area, right? And that's where I grew up. And those fights, when you sent that stuff and other people I talked to, that's not John Jay. That's 2 or 3 little groups of folks that, frankly, have lost their way, and they hurt the reputation of 2,000 kids.
Yes.
25 hurting the reputation of 2,500. And we've got to stop that. John Jay is a fantastic learning institution. It's a great school. Its history, most of the time, there's 3 or 4 big schools in town that people respect automatically when you say their names, or they know of the school. Mm-hmm. Central Catholic is always one of them. Clark had always been one of them. Holmes and Jay, like, religiously, people know those schools. And so it's got a great history, and to me, it's personal. And so we went in there and did a lot, and it's died down, but that's the only way to do it. And guess what? It'll flare back up again, and they'll be fighting, ruining businesses, ruining their own lives, getting arrested, putting themselves in bad positions, using drugs, but they're not going to be doing it in that drug den anymore because it's gone. So, go somewhere else to do it. But, the best we can do is clean the area up. During that month, we cleaned up 220 tons. Wow. Of trash, 440,000 pounds
And y'all teamed up with Waste Management to
Waste Management and us and a bunch of other cleanup crews and 220 tons, 2,000 pounds in a ton, and we cleaned up 220 tons across the entire district. And frankly, we made a dent, but that was it. So
it makes a noticeable dent, but it's still, it's like you feel like you haven't accomplished anything. Like that's how I feel whenever I do a task and it seems like you've done so much work, and then you just look at the work that you've done and it just looks like a dent. How does that not dismotivate you to stop from doing what you're doing right now?
Well, in this line of work, if you're in government work, you have something believing where you want to be a politician or you want to get involved at the city or do things in politics or government, you have to understand that the win is often tiny. Like it's nothing that would ever blip on the radar of life. Like we walked up and down Calabria and cleaned up the trash. We had the Brownies, the Girl Scouts with us, neighborhood leaders, my team, and we walked the whole length of Calabria and cleaned up the road from 1604 into Grissom, Tezel. Cleaned the whole walk up because it looked like somebody just dumped, like a dump truck went the whole way and through. It was insane. I was like, where did all this garbage come from? We cleaned it all up, and that felt great. We were on the news, super. Facebook posts, everybody thinks it's great, right? Okay. Then it's gone.
Yeah.
And then a lady calls and says, I really appreciate you doing that because my parents are visiting me. And I want them to think I'm living in a nice part of town, and it was clean. So I just want to call and say thank you. I mean, so that little tiny, all that work, right?
One thank you is more than enough.
That's what you got to get used to if you want to be a public servant is the tiny thank you, right? Is the one little person that says, yeah, I really appreciated that. Because you're going to get 50 you stinks and the city stinks and you guys are terrible and you're taking all my cash, and because they lump us all together, as they should. I mean, we're the machine, right? You're going to get 50 of those, and you're going to get one of them. So my whole fight with the job is to try to get more of those tiny wins than tiny losses. And it comes from hard work, and it's okay to lose. It's just fix it and win the next time. That's kind of how I look at it.
I see that you've been trying to get more of the community involved. Like you're trying to get more residents involved in cleaning up the community. How do you think that's going so far?
I think it went well. Like there wasn't a one we didn't have 20 to 30 volunteers, and for a city count, I mean that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
One of the things that when I took office that I felt needed to happen was that you try to build a community of neighborhoods, a family of neighborhoods, and that means always bringing them together, letting them know everything at the same time, doing the best you could. It's impossible, though. I mean, it's so much. It's 40 plus neighborhoods, 155,000 residents. It's very difficult to just be there, and I can't be at all of it. So that's why you have to have a staff and a team that's supporting you, because I can't do it. And some people I don't get to for 2 or 3 months, and it's sad. But you keep coming, and you always try to make them when you can, and you pop in, and you try to get the word out as best you can. But I try to make sure that we at least build that people have some level of thanks and respect, that we work together. One of the things we did when I took over the office was we did a bus tour of the West Side, because we have very nice neighborhoods in certain parts of District 6 is essentially split by 410. Yes. Inside the loop does kind of a zigzag as poverty issues. And they don't have, there's families there that don't have a lot. And then you come outside of 410, and we still have some of those issues, but we got a lot more nicer areas, right? Subdivisions, gated communities and stuff like that. So you can literally from one side, you can drive from a $500,000 home in District 6 and in 2 miles get to a $55,000 house. So that disparity is huge, right? In a very short distance. So one of the things I said was, look, because some of those people live in the big high dollar gateds, right, communities. They have needs too. Trust me, man. They want their streets done. They want their yards, their medians cut. And then I've also got to try to take care of the West Side and Edgewood, old Highway 90, you mentioned that. There's houses over there. They ain't seen a street repair in 40 years.
And that's another thing I want. What is the budget looking like for the 2018 budget that y'all just came back
Oh yeah. So
how is that looking?
To segue out of that, right? To move out of that piece, that's the fight, right? Like, how do you convince people who are paying more taxes because their house is $500,000 versus the homeowner in the west side whose house is $50,000, who's not putting as much into it, but percentage wise is putting in the same, right? They're putting in portions of their income. So we took them on a bus trip, and this was the beauty of it. We took the neighbors into those areas that were tough, and you know what? To a T, every one of them said, "We got to help these areas." I'm okay, Greg, help these folks. I mean, it was really refreshing to see that out of the district. But they only know that because you put them in front of it.
Yeah.
The budget we're looking at is very difficult. We're going to be at $2.8 billion. We're going to pass that thing next month. I think District 6 is getting a pretty decent share of this go around. We're going to have almost $8 million for streets and sidewalks. We fought for a couple of parks and some purchases of some land. So we were going to pick up a park off of Rimrock Trail. We fought to get that cash in the budget. Awesome. The goals that I was targeting, I think we've got where we needed to be. And I think I'm feeling pretty good about it from a budget perspective, but $2.8 billion is a lot of money. Out of that, $1.2 billion of it is the general fund, which allows us to spend things on police, fire, different types of co-compliance issues, cleanups, delegate agencies like Helping Haven for Hope and other areas. I think we're in a good position as a city, and you got to give credit to the staff for that. I mean, they do solid work day in, day out, because they're the ones that really are here forever. The council members come and go, but the staff is the one. The professional paid staff does well, and I think District 6 is going to do well this budget. We've got the couple of priorities I was looking for that mattered most to us, and the real win is during the year. Once you got the cash, you're going to work. You implement that money where it's needed most. But that's on the council member. It's on the district, and I try to do it with everybody having input, all neighbors.
Awesome. Is the via trans stop right there on Highway 90 within the district? I know it's on the border. I don't know.
That's District 4.
Okay.
But all of our residents use it. District 6 and I share that area. And we have that coming in. It's going to be upgraded here in the next couple of years. It's going to look completely different.
Are they doing right now? Are they doing an expansion?
Yeah, they're getting ready to expand. Okay. Next couple of years, it's going to. No, you won't recognize that.
Right. Yeah, because I just had some concerns because I was going out camping to Guadalupe State Park, and I noticed a huge via transit stop that they were building out there off of 281. I was just like,
yeah, that was like $20-something million.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. I guess that many people ride out here, but why is I've seen that via, because I drive by that pretty much every morning for work, and I just see it's just overflowing with vehicles and people just riding the buses.
And that's the challenge, right? And that's what pisses people off, unless they get the facts and understand what's happening. So, like you point out exactly the problem, right, or the perception. I go out to 281, 1604, and they got a $20-something million facility out there. It's got 10 cars parked there.
Yeah.
And the thing looks amazing. Then I come off of 90, and I see that one next to the credit union's been there for 30 years, and it looks like Armageddon, right? Like it's packed full of cars, and the building looks run down. It's not a place you take your grandma to, right? I mean, that's what it looks like. So the citizen looks at that and says, man, this is wrong. And there's some truth to it. So we have to think about those things when we spend the money. I like where VIA's going. I think they've done great work. Actually, they're doing fantastic work. We've given them an extra $10 million last year. We're going to do it again this year. They're upgrading traffic routes. They're starting to bring more service quicker. There's a lot of cars out there. So what they've got to do is they're trying to make sure people use the public transit system. So in that area, there's a lot of people going through there, a lot of traffic and congestion. Frankly, far more than Highway 90, let's be honest.
Yes.
So they're trying to get people out of those cars onto the public transport to come down. It's good for the economy. It's good for the environment. There's a lot of positive behind it. But the resident, is going to see that and be like, come on, man, you got to fix this. So they have a plan to fix that that bus location right there, that terminus, that terminal right there. And it's going to look different in the next couple of years. But we have to put some money, too, into the area. Just because we don't have that massive amount of traffic flow doesn't mean the community...
There is massive traffic flow during peak hours during the morning. I mean,
it's busy there.
Yes, it's busy there. Very busy.
Plus, I graduated basic training from Lackland Air Force Base. 750 kids graduate through their 51 out of 52 weeks of the year or something like that. Like every week they're graduating 700 kids out of there, young Americans out of basic training. If you go down there, that's not a place that people are going to be proud about. If you think about it, like people coming across the globe, across the country to watch their kids graduate basic training. And that's where they go see it.
Yeah.
It's not representative of what we should be doing as a community with that corridor from 410 to Military on Highway 90. We have to do something in there to create something that looks beautiful, that brings in people proud of. That's the #1 military training institution in the world, Lackland Air Force Base. It looks
and it has that, which I'm glad to see the walk bridge going across Highway 90.
Yeah, credit Councilman Saldana for that. He really pushed for that.
And then also that strip mall that is basically getting teared down now. That's been
and now that's in Councilman Saldana's district. But
I know.
and he's done amazing work over there. He really has. He's done some really good work over there over the years. And he's in his 8th year as a council member. He's actually leaving here. This is his last 9 months on the dais. But you know, I grew up in that area. It's been the same way. That Corona nightclub, I think, has been a different nightclub for the last 10 years.
Yes.
Every year is something different. The place needs to go. We need to put the money in there. And Councilman Saldana and I have talked about me carrying that forward when he moves on and trying to make sure we got a good plan there for the community to revitalize that area. It's desperately needed. And it's embarrassing for the city, if you ask me. Some of those areas there, just bad. And it doesn't, at the end of it, what I've always said is we got a lot of money as a city. We're very fortunate. We got a pretty strong economy, got a well-managed city machine. What we have to remember, though, is that, you know, a lot of the money needs to just go to where it matters most. City Hall likes to call it equity, or they try to put some fancy name around it. At the end of the day, we have to put the money where it matters most, where it's needed most. And sometimes people get left out of that equation, and they do, right? And that's a perfect example of an area that's forgotten, as is Old Highway 90. Old Highway 90 had its name changed to Enrique Barrera Parkway. Major communities opposition to that, and that area hasn't seen development or growth 40 years. And that's the things we got to think about. You know, so like I focus and spend a lot of time in there, just like you mentioned at the beginning about the cultural heritage cultural district over there we employed. Got a proof of that because there's a cultural significance to the area that must be recognized and preserved. And then we have to come in. The Alamo Colleges is putting in a $24 million workforce education training campus there.
Really?
Yep. It's going to be break ground at 40th and Old Highway 90, 40th and Barrera Parkway right there. We're putting in $10 million of street infrastructure right there. So that place we're starting to light the fuse about what can be done in there. But we did that cultural study and that cultural designation, second only in the city behind, I think it's Jefferson, Woodlawn area, Jefferson area. But we did it because we will not forget what the history of that street was. And that's the growth. That's how you protect neighborhoods when a city grows and you try to build something. Broadway was anything to be proud of 10, 15 years ago. It was kind of run down, right?
Well, not even the Pearl Brewery, even 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, and then now look at it. It's amazing, and it takes a car payment to eat a dinner over there. So you have to also watch, right? You price people out of their homes, and you change their lives because they can't afford to live there. So we have to watch those things as well, and that's what we're trying to do.
What about, speaking of houses, do you feel sometimes the community is getting too overdeveloped with housing, affordable housing, because the more houses we build, we take away more grass, and we add more concrete. That leads to more flooding in other neighborhoods. Yeah,
it's a tight rope to walk because we're short, I don't know, 250,000 housing units in the city. That's a lot of people that don't have an opportunity to have a home, right? Whether it's an apartment house or whatever. There's been a big shift in the city's mentality and the willingness to spend that kind of cash to create more affordable housing opportunities. But to do that, you have to recognize that you're going to have to put affordable housing units. And really, it's not really affordable. It's kind of a really bad moniker for it. Because it used to be they called them Section 8. Actually, they used to call them like courts and public housing.
And then Section 8.
And now it's affordable housing, right? So the minute somebody says, oh, affordable housing is coming here, what does the neighborhood do? No, not in my backyard, right? Like, Not going to happen. The crime's going to rise. There'll be no schools to be overcrowded, and there's legitimate fear around that. So we've got a development coming up here right off of Culebra Road. The Cesar Chavez Foundation is looking to build some affordable housing units in there. Workforce housing units is what they're now trying to call them, workforce housing. And it's needed, right? People, I believe, need to, people care about two things. I just want a good job and a good roof over my head. The best I can get of the two. Then let government get the heck out of my life. But that's what I want. At least have it so I can have a decent job, bring good jobs, and at least let me have a rooftop. So you have to be willing to sacrifice to put the rooftop up. That means you should have overbearing legislation, right, to where developers don't want to build here. The average home price in San Antonio to purchase is like $240,000, $250,000. That's the average home price. And of that, right now, 10 to 15% of that is direct result of city fees and development restrictions.
Really?
So,
I did not know that.
Yes, $25,000 to $30,000 price of every home bought is because of the cost to prepare the yard, prepare the lot, to pay for the saws fees. $25,000 to $30,000 of a cost of the average home in San Antonio goes to regulation that the city of San Antonio has implemented over the last 15 years. So we're also part of the problem. And I'm not saying you remove all regulation and let the developers, everybody run crazy, but you also have to think about what are we doing that's causing home prices to go up and affordability to be in jeopardy right now. People can't own a home. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of young folks, people growing up right now, it's not that important for them to own a home anymore like it used to be 50 years ago. Home ownership was it, man. That was the American dream. People aren't generally like that anymore. Like, it's just not that as prevalent. But having a safe place to live in a good neighborhood is something everybody wants. So I think we have to be okay, unfortunately, because it's kind of what you're saying. What about the green space and everything else? To house people, we're gonna have to let go of some things, fees, regulation, and be willing to build in areas that we've never built in before. But understanding that, you don't come in and plop a $500,000 home next to a $100,000 neighborhood. You have to be wise and smart about where you're at, not cause people to not be able to afford living anymore. So that way, if you're building around neighborhoods, the gentrification issue is always going to be there. You're pricing grandma out of her house, right? Because you're building all around her, and that property value is skyrocketing, and you're in trouble. And that and the property value pieces, that's a whole other fight. That's got nothing to do with the city. So the city's making a big play right now into housing, going to spend up to $1 billion over the next 10 years. I'm not on board with that. I think that's not the core function of the cities. We shouldn't be guaranteeing house loans or giving down payment assistance and stuff like that. What we should be doing is allowing people, right, to deregulate the environment so they can build homes. Profit making is okay in the development world, but we want people to build in certain areas, right? And that, like that housing development here on Culebra Road, I want to see that come in and be successful. I would love for them to come in, the Cesar Chavez Foundation, and put good homes and good families in there so that we can show that it can be done in District 6 and they're good families, and then turn into a crime den and all these other things. But what you have to do is you have to give it your best shot, be willing to understand it's going to take everybody working together. But housing, I used to be in the housing business on the mortgage side of it when I was a banker. That's what I did. So we have to be very careful on it, because people are, I'm telling you, man, they love the ideas of stuff, but just don't do it near me. And we have to work that to change that mentality. And I think that housing is one of the biggest challenges we have. But even then, at the ultimate goal, you got to have the cash to pay for these things, which means people got to have jobs. Yes. And our economic opportunities and the things that are coming to San Antonio, we're missing the boat on job and job recruitment, employee recruitment, business recruitment, like bringing people to San Antonio. They're going to create wealth. We're not really doing that. We've become an anti-business environment, and that's not good for San Antonio. We have a wage gap already, right, between the folks making the big bucks and then the day-to-day folks scraping by, right? That wage inequality issue is huge. The wage gap.
The average salary in San Antonio is $35,000 a year.
Yeah, the average family is floating in the $48,000 to $52,000 range, and people are surviving on that. But you got people surviving on $12,000 bucks a year. I mean, it's that disparity in the wage is something we have to think about. So, and the answer is not mandating $15 an hour so everybody makes $15. I mean,
No.
that's not the answer. The answer is to get the good employers and the opportunities in here. So San Antonio has to really be okay with offering business incentives, and that's a tough one for me. Like when I came on the council, we were giving millions to big banks and big companies, and I'm like, you can't give $10,000 to the burger joint on Old Highway 90. I mean, but you can give $6 million to this credit union, but you can't give $10,000 to waive this guy's fees so he can expand and hire 2 people. Like his hiring 2 people is just as important as their 600.
Well, to other people, they'd be like, well, what's the profit margin between the two? The big multi-million-dollar firm is going to bring in more money for the city versus the burger joint.
Yeah, but think about the principle of what you're trying to do. 97%, according to the city of San Antonio's businesses are small businesses, and they deserve the same crack at opportunity wealth. But it's a scaled thing, right? I give them $6 million, but I can waive the Papa's Burgers or Azteca Flooring. If I can find a way to waive the fees from the saws from San Antonio Water System for her, I've probably done that business
a huge favor,
and it's scalable. So that $5,000 is the difference between them expanding and not, literally. And they expand. So for the $5,000, I get 2 $50,000 a year jobs that come into San Antonio, or she creates 2 $50,000 positions because they go to a bigger building. They need 2 new salespeople, right? So we've created 2 jobs. Come over to the credit union. They're not creating any new jobs. They're just not firing anybody, and they're moving to a bigger building, and it's nicer, but we give them $6 million in tax credits. If you look at it scale-wise, we've done basically the same work. We have to save the big company. We do have to incent to keep them.
We do.
But we expand to help the small business, because if the small business is employing over 97%, right, if our businesses are small, if they're out there putting people on the job, you add up all those jobs, all from all those small businesses, you're talking about the workforce.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out a way to help those companies build. And that's one of the things that was most important to me when I came on, was from a business incentive and growth perspective, let's be just as thoughtful for the little guy as we are for the big behemoth. We need the big behemoth. You're right. They bring the tax rolls, they bring the $100,000 a year jobs, and they're bringing 600 of them. But to me, it's just as important, the small one, because I could piece them together. And we fought for that, and we've had great success in it. And at the end of this year, you're going to see changes to the program that are going to go back and fix those kinds of disparities and help small businesses expand. It's going to be a big win for San Antonio and for business, period.
That's one of the things I like, is that you're pushing forward the small business mindset. Like, because I ventured into the idea of maybe opening up a coffee shop, but then I'm just like, the city rules, city ordinance, and then the taxes that come along with opening a business, it makes it very hard. I don't even know how some businesses starting out, how they survive. And you see some shops, brand new business opens up, but then they close probably less than a year. And sometimes it's not in bad areas. They should be doing good, but it's the behind the costs that you don't see.
Yeah, you don't notice it. The little things. And people think businesses, we just went through a big vote yesterday on paid sick leave.
I read about that.
And I voted against it to protect the small businesses. And I'll give you an idea. We were talking about Facebook comments earlier. Somebody hammered, because I said, hey, look, I said yesterday on the city council, I said, business owners count every napkin. Small business owners. Every bowl of chips they put on that aren't used. If you go to you're at the Jalisco, you're sitting there, they bring you your tortillas. There's 3 of them in there, but you only eat 1.
Yeah.
The other 2 get tossed away. So I actually started a program where I go work in other businesses in District 6 just to see what their life's like. And I went and worked at Viola's Ventanas, the restaurant here on Westover Hills. And I threw away more food that people did not consume. And that's a profit. Like, that's margin. So I said yesterday, I said, hey, you know what? People count these. You're saying we need to do paid sick leave. You have to understand what the small business world is, how that works. And I said, look, they're counting every chip or penny, man. It's down to that. And the small business owner sometimes has to pay the payroll out of their own pocket. That's like you described, right? How do you survive? You survive because you pay it out of your own pocket, or you go do the work yourself if somebody calls in sick.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody on Facebook I didn't address him because it would have gone nowhere, but said, well, you're just running, and I don't know what kind of language I can use, but warning to the children, if anybody ever listens to this, they said, well, you just must be running a shitty business. I said, that's somebody who doesn't understand business, doesn't understand small business, because small business is an endless fight to stay afloat.
Yes.
It is. And it's not that you run a bad business. It's just that sometimes your receivables don't come in. Sometimes you send out your invoices and your people don't pay you for an extra week, or they take 2 weeks to pay you, right?
Or 30, 60 days.
Or 30, 60 days. So what do? Not pay your employees? Because the person said, oh, well, hello, dummy. You're supposed to pay your employees and stop running a shitty business. I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing it to pay my employees, yes. But I got to think, too, I've got to buy equipment. I've got to buy insurance. I've got to pay for the rent, utilities, everything. Got my payroll. And XYZ company hasn't paid me yet because they're taking 10, 20, 30, 60 days on their net to take back and pay me. So there's weeks when small businesses are fluctuating, and some weeks you're tight.
And other weeks you're flourishing.
Other weeks you're, man, I'm in a good show. You're trying to save money throughout, but at the end of the day, small business isn't a week to week fun in chocolate rivers and eating candy and massages and no, it's none of that, right? It's just not a happy-go-lucky world. It's a constant fight to stay afloat and earn your business until it grows to a point where you can get past the bounce checks and the difficulties of life of being a small business owner. So that's how out of touch people are with the business world and the small business owners. So I always think, look, man, we just do the best we can to help them be successful. So like you say, I want to start a coffee shop. Those are needed. Like there needs to be one. Nothing like that exists except for Starbucks, really.
Yeah.
And, that's it. So little places like there's a Barista. Have you ever seen that one open up on Culebra Road inside? You ever heard of it? You got to go check it out.
What's it called?
Barista.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, you got to go check it out, man. I've been there a couple of times. I met some people there. Super cool little joints, open till 3 o'clock every day. And it's a family-owned shop like that. It's a coffee shop now serving a little bit of food. It's in District 7. You go about a mile and a half inside Culebra Road, 410. It's a great joint to hang out and have a coffee and a sandwich or a scone or whatever it is you want to eat. But that's the kind of stuff, right? So how do we help them as a city? Well, we waive their permits and fees so they don't have to pay all that to open the shop. We don't charge them the inspections and stuff like that. When they come out and the inspector comes and you pay $150 per inspection, but you got 4 of those you got to do to open your doors. We waive certificate of occupancy fees. We don't charge the SAWS fees. We encourage them because that's how we help them. The big business, we're going to have to give them no taxes for 10 years because they're going to get that somewhere else. I still want them here. So we have to concede. I'm okay with that. But the small business, man, they've been getting nothing. They're out there floating on their own, and that's how we step in and help them so that you can think, man, where can I go get this? Well, I go to Lift Fund or Launch SA, 2 programs that the city of San Antonio works with, funds and helps, and they're startup entrepreneur incubators. They help you get started, help you understand taxes, they help you understand payroll, they help you understand all of that so you can go out and start your coffee shop. And then good luck to you after that, man, because being a small business owner is...
No, that's one of the things that discouraged me from going that route.
But all the tools are there to help you do it. But at the end of the day, man,
you're left out to...
You got to have the guts again to say, I'm going to roll the dice. I left and became self-employed, I don't know, man, 10 years ago? I don't even remember. I lost track of the time. And I can honestly say, man, I don't know how I've made it this far. Like, it's an endless slog, right? Like, some years are great and some months were like, oh my gosh, I can't, and it's because people don't pay you. Technology changes. You got to upgrade here. You got to do this. An accident happens here. Vehicle gets totaled there. Something always happens. And at the end of it, I'm 10 years later, I'm looking at myself like, man, I've survived it this far. How did it, but I love every minute of it. I never go back to the desk. But that's me. Not everybody's in it for it, but if you have a drive, and the city needs to help that, because the business owner, small businesses is this, I'll leave it, wrap up on small businesses. That's family wealth. Like, your family's tied to you. Every business I'm talking about, it's because your family does it. Like, it's passed on.
Well, nowadays it's not even just family. It's a group of people that venture in a business deal together, and then it's a shared risk.
It's shared wealth and risk. And that's still family environment, right? And then all of y'all are in on it, and it gets passed on. And that wealth moves generation to generation. So our ability to incent and say, I'm going to hire, instead of 3 waiters, now I've got 5 and 2 cooks, and I'm moving up. Like the Los Barrios family restaurants started as Los Barrios downtown San Antonio with mom, the cooking and the wait staff. She was the wait staff. And look at them now. They've got restaurants all over the city. Somewhere had to start, though. And that's, for the business world, it's very important to me. And I think we got to step up and make sure as a city we're doing those things.
Well, I greatly appreciate the work you've been doing for the city. I hope you keep pushing hard, keep doing what you're doing, keep speaking out, keep standing up for yourself, because that's what makes you a true representation of District 6, is that you stand up for the voters, and that you're honest. Some people don't like that, but I see your honesty, and I admire it.
No, I appreciate that.
So thank you so much for the work
thank
that
you. Get to opening that coffee shop, and I hope that you can do your podcast from the coffee shop there. But I don't know if that's possible, but I help you out. But and do it in District 6, by the way. And thank you for being here, coming out, and spending the time with us. And I encourage anybody, again, we're right here on Calabria Road, 8373. If you want to sit down and bullshit with me and talk about what's going on and ask me questions, just do it. I talk to anybody, anytime, anyway. I don't mind dealing with folks. I'll meet you anywhere and have a conversation about it and figure out what's best for the city. I love what I do. I'm blessed to do it. And like I said, I'll go 24/7 till my time is up here, and then I'll pass it to somebody else. But until then, if you ever need me, anybody out there does, you know where to find me. It's Greg Brockhouse at the City of San Antonio, Council Member District 6, and I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to spend the time with you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys for listening in. Again, this the Primal Texan Experiment podcast. Tune in again next time we have a podcast. Thanks for listening in. Bye, guys. You ended, Josh? Thanks, man.